issues, and it's so behind the scenes at the same time that what citizens do is first and foremost important. Another important thing is that all that backroom sausage making, it's hugely important. It can make the difference in some cases just logistically. That turned out one problem was initially having the transport to move all the ballots out to the field. So those would be my two.
Thank you. Dr. Chris?
My two issues would be openness and ownership. Elections are a people-driven process. They should be open to the people of the country, and all aspects of the electoral process should be open. And as my brother here said, and I really have to commend Sahara Report, because this was one of the alarm bells that rang on a regular basis with regards to elections in Nigeria, that when the process is open and everything is done in broad daylight, there's a very high probability that everyone would accept the outcome. There's little room for cheating. Then civic organizations that want to monitor the process will be able to monitor the process. Political parties will be able to deploy their poll watchers in all of the polling sites. They would see for themselves what is transpired across the country, and it will be very easy for everyone to accept the outcome. It's true, President Jonathan accepted defeat even before INEC called the results. But this was also because he benefited from an open process, because his poll watchers were able to send in their own returns and to say, Mr. President, this thing wasn't going in your favor. So openness for me is really the first thing, and we should be shedding lights on elections. Elections should be a process of celebration across the country, and not a process by which human life is being lost or property destroyed. And then the second thing is just ownership, that citizens need to take full ownership of their processes. And those entrusted with the responsibility of administering elections have to take full ownership of that responsibility. The role that the chairman of the Independent National Election Commission played in Nigeria was crucial. At one point you felt like this country of 175 million people, 69 million registered voters, this country was all hanging on the shoulders of one individual. And if he had made the wrong call in that entire process, Nigeria could have gone up in flames.
Thank you so much. Mr. Shawar.
Yes, one of it is external and the second is internal, and we've spoken a lot about our international partners, and I mean Western countries in particular, to which African leaders listen to. It is very important that they are very clear and unambiguous about their expectations of elections. And one of the problems we've had in the past is that sometimes even our partners from here in the US speaks from both sides of their mouth. On elections in Africa, in some places they accept elections that are not on par with international standards, their own standards. And in some places they condemn elections that may even be fair. So we must have one single unambiguous standard for all African elections and African leaders. And I want to use this opportunity to quickly talk about one of our friends who is practicing free media in Angola, Rafael Marques, who is facing trial for doing the same kind of work that I did in Nigeria that delivered this kind of election that we are proudly talking about today. He's going to be facing trial for all sorts of criminal charges by the Angolan ruling elite. We must support him. And internally, it's important that people take ownership not only of the process but of the narrative. One of the things that used to happen before we mobilized new media in Nigeria is that everybody waited for CNN to even call our own elections. Now we do it ourselves. Now we do it with pride, and we report, and we are not afraid to report good and bad about Nigeria, because it's a country that is half the population of the United States of America. So it's a big country. So we must take full ownership, and we should not regret when we do so, and we should be proud of it. So that's the internal and this external advice that I have for taking ownership of it.
Mr. Misa.
All right, so I would like, so the first lessons learned, I know you've mentioned international partners like the US, but I would like to highlight the role of regional bodies, such as the ECOWAS and the AU. They have played a huge role in this election. This wasn't maybe publicized in the media, but the AU and the ECOWAS have had different discussions, with President Jonathan, with now President-elect Buhari, in order to make sure that these elections go smoothly, that they are free and fair. And I think that we don't give them a lot of credit, and they do play a huge role in the stability of the region. Second, lessons learned, and that would maybe relate to the role of the NED here. It's really when you have a vibrant civil society, the elections or whatever issue actually you're facing will be easily tackled or very smoothly because the people have decided, and I guess Nigeria has decided.
Thank you. I hear a number of issues, and I'll summarize at the end, but I think your interventions were complementary in some ways, and I think we have a good list of 8 or 10 key areas, entry points, and key lessons learned that we could try and extrapolate to the rest of the continent, domesticate it to each country's own situation, of course. So we'll summarize those at the end. I think my next question would have to be with, has to do with some of the more problematic situations in a number of countries with upcoming elections. And my question to you is, as you look ahead to 2015 and 2016, which 2 elections do you see as being the most difficult or the most controversial, and why? I will start with Professor this time and bring it in this time.
Okay, I have a very long list.
Keep it to 2.
Okay, let me choose the DRC. That will be next year, and maybe start with Guinea, which is not a country that we talk or that's really in the media that much. So the presidential elections in Guinea are scheduled for, I think, October of this year. And really the first, I would say, democratic elections that Guinea has had was in 2010, and the elections were extremely violent. It looks like it will be the same scenario in 2016, I'm sorry, no, 2016, yes, 15, this year. So I think that this election will be challenging if it takes place, because that's, I think, a concern. And the issues that the ruling party and the government has had with the opposition is something that, I mean, it's really difficult to see it resolved before the elections take place. So I would say Guinea is one key election that will also influence the stability of the West Africa region. I will not mention Burkina Faso on purpose, because I think that we've talked a lot about Burkina, and I think there are other countries that really deserve attention. I would like to mention the DRC. My time is up, okay. Well, DRC, very important election.
I think we'll get back to that during the Q&A, so I'll bring it in. Sure.
I'm more interested in places where elections don't take place. I would call them elections. In Togo, which is happening this weekend, is a place that I'm really concerned about. That it's going to be a non-election that we are going to refer to, unfortunately, as an election. I also would like to go far as Cameroon sometimes, where I heard the next election is 2018. And there hasn't been election, and I don't think there are elections where leaders just don't change. You know, when you have the same guy being contesting and being voted for in elections that they tightly control. And I know the ambassadors of this country will not be happy with me. Those places need real elections. Yeah. And I think Guinea, as you mentioned, is going to be an interesting one because apparently they are manipulating the constitution once again.
Having been part and parcel of that debate and discussion over Nigeria all of 2014, and never having lost any of my optimism, even when I testified before Congressman Vice and Congressman Smith in January, I'll sidestep your question and say that given NDI's experience over the years working on elections in Africa and other parts of the world, having just gone through what Nigeria has done, I would courageously say that there isn't an African election that ought to be difficult. That if there's political will amongst the stakeholders in the country, a lot of the issues that we see in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Burundi, in Guinea-Conakry, ought to be resolved by the citizens of these countries, such that these countries could have meaningful elections. I'm trying to put the burden on the stakeholders in those countries to do what it takes in the time that's left for their citizens to have good elections, so that we don't make it easy for them by already declaring in advance that these elections wouldn't go well. There is no reason why Burundi, with its size and its population, shouldn't have a peaceful and meaningful electoral process. There is no reason why a leader who came into power through the Arusha Accords that stipulated that 10 years after getting to power, there should be a peaceful turnover of political leadership, should want to cling to power and see his country go down the tubes, even though Burundi has had a peaceful period for the past 10 years. So I think a lot of those issues can be tackled, and we should be encouraging, nurturing, pushing, persuading stakeholders in those countries to do what it takes, because we've passed the point where an African life should be lost because a leader wants to stay in power forever, or because they want to steal an electoral process.
The next two.
So I think Chris actually just said it beautifully in terms of that all things are possible in the days ahead. And I already mentioned, and he just mentioned, but certainly the U.S. government hopes that the Arusha Accords will be adhered to in the case of Burundi and the term limits, and we hope that all the right decisions will be made in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but we're constantly in dialogue with a number of countries and watching things and trying to encourage these positive outcomes, just as civil society is, and fellow Africans and so forth. So there are always problems that can occur in elections. We've seen a few even in our own country. And so people can make a difference to make sure that things do go well in these that are coming up.
Thank you so much. I could go on and on and on with these questions, but I recognize you're all here and would like to engage on this critical topic. So let me just, first of all, thank our four panelists for really tackling this issue head-on and raising some very important issues for us to discuss. So a lot of food for thought in what they have provided us today. With that, let's move on to the broader discussion, which is the Q&A. And before we begin this Q&A, here are some important rules for engagement. As you can see, this room is packed, and I'm sure all of you would like to engage. And so what we have done is we've provided both standing and wireless microphones in the room. Please line up either behind the standing mics. Okay. Slight change. Line up behind the standing mics, and you will be recognized to offer your question or very quick comment. No questions. One question for each person, please, or one quick comment so we can get in as many people as possible. Yes. I will ask each of you to identify yourself and the organization that maybe you're affiliated with if you have one, and also if there's a particular panelist you'd like to address your question to, please do so at this point.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Honorable Madam President, I want to add my voice to the felicitation. You show still, and here in Boston, your interest for your country, from where you are descended. Thank you very much for the panelists too. Coming up here, I have well, first of all, Africa is not Europe, it's not America. For my country, we are 56 years old. We have to learn. For instance, you know how we got our independence. We have not been colonized by French or English, only by German. We had to fight be independent in 1960. Fortunately, United States shown his interest for the liberation of Africa, particularly Cameroon. In 1957, 3 years before Cameroon got the independence, America came in Douala and opened a consular mission. 1958 in Yaoundé. And in the United States nation, they support the claim of Cameroonians to be independent. Now, Cameroon, let me give you an example. We have 137 parties politics registered. We have 144 titles of newspaper. We have 48 private television, while the government has only one. We are convinced that we have to educate our people. Let me call you an example. One big chief in the North Park called me while the election was conducted. He said, my son, what is this? I'm a warrior. I came here at 6 o'clock with my 300 people to vote. We are warriors. And they asked us to hide to vote. It means that to go to what we know, we people have been educated. Secondly, they asked me to stand up and to go and pick the vote. No, this is something against my authority. So it is why I say we are learning. We are learning. And let me remind you, they used to say in the past, democracy athenaia anarchy. In Greek, we are not born living with experience of democracy. See, while we are open to the country who experience, like USA, like others. And I'm very, very sorry. The journalists should know that we have 20 million population. Among them 6 million of foreigners. Among them 4 million Nigerians. That is the reality. We have, for instance, you know what is going wrong. Boko Haram killing people.
Yes.
We cannot say it's a plot of Nigeria against Cameroon. No. We are sharing Kanuri people. We are sharing Arab Shua people. So I say, while criticizing, first of all, you should know the history. Respect it. Secondly, see the way the country is facing. We cannot accept that we build a country of 2 levels. The people who can participate because they are educated, and the people who they can drop like cows. No. Everybody has to know. And democracy is a long process of acquisition of value. So thank you very much. And while we are proud of what happened to Nigeria, let me say that Cameroon is not out of that. You heard about Nikombaga, it was my cousin. The first account of Nigerian military was my uncle, he had died. Power in Cameroon. Mawali. His son is there, Commander Manga. What have they done to this family? While we have 6 million Nigerians controlling all the market of Douala, we said, well, we are proud. I should also give you the info that in Gadwa, in down there, when Buhari passed, it was 1 day of death. Thank you very much.
Hello? Oh, okay. I just wanted to make a quick announcement, just an AGOA update. So the Ways and Means Committee is going on right now, and they actually are hearing AGOA now. The Ways and Means off building is in Longworth, and it's room 1100 on the first floor. So if anybody would like to go over there, it's being heard now. They just started, they gave opening statements. We don't, again, expect it to be controversial, but it means so much for folks to be in the audience. I also just wanted to reference that we gave, obviously, priority to the ambassador to speak. But as our very able MC said, people will be asked to speak very, very briefly, either make a comment or ask a question. And I do appreciate our representative and leader from USAID who referenced the fact that, we are talking about elections in Africa, but we have a lot to deal with here. I mean, right now, the Supreme Court essentially really put a major roadblock into the Voting Rights Act, and it's shameful that 50 years after the Voting Rights Act, we are still fighting for the Voting Rights Act and the right to vote in our own country. And so we need to just put that in context. We talk about how, we want to have democracies in Africa. We have work to do at home.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you, Representative Bass. All right, so I'm looking behind you, there's at least 15 people. So here's how we're going to go. We're going to take 4 more questions in this round, 1 minute each. Please work with me so we can hear as many voices as possible. So, sir, you're next.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much, ambassadors and Congresswoman Bass, for inviting us and to be here. This is my second time coming to these hearings. I'm from Francis Sierra Leone, Vice President of Francis Sierra Leone, and I'm Chairman for the Kono District Global Organization. My name is Ea Fande, and I'm also a founding member of Concerned Sierra Leoneans, which has just been instituted and formed a couple days ago. My question to the panelists, and I just want to bring this up to the entire audience. I don't know if you're aware of what is happening in my own country, Sierra Leone. This is where an elected vice president was sacked by the sitting president. And it concerns us as Sierra Leoneans because we want to preserve our young democracy, which is very, very young. And also, we want to make sure the elections that are coming up in 2018, they're conducted fair. We demand the reinstatement of the vice president back to his powers as a constitutional state, This is a blatant disrespect of Sierra Leonean constitution and the rule of law. So we are asking Congress and the United States government to make sure we're demanding the reinstatement of our vice president back to power as a constitutional state and respect the rule of law, and then also make sure there's freedom of press in Sierra Leone. Thank you so much. And my brother, thank you so much. You just, what you're doing is what we're doing also on the diaspora, as far as Sierra Leone is concerned. Thank you.
Julia Royal, NIH. There are 2 countries I'm following with great interest that are perhaps different from some of the ones that have been discussed so far, but I'd love to hear the panel speak to the upcoming, in the next few years, elections in Uganda and Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my sister, direct and to the point. Much appreciated. Next, please.
My name is Jenab Bilibali. I am the ambassador of Mali. I want to thank Professor Mukarabas for inviting me. I rather have a comment. My comment is that in my country, the first democratic election happened in 1992. And from 1992 to 2002, my country has had very, very deep democracy and very, very important economic development because of democracy. And the world, the West, has helped us very, very much in effecting democracy. In 2012, a coup occurred in my country. And the world, has abandoned us on the economic basis anyway. But then the world again helped us very much by refusing to let the militaries who did the coup run the country. So transitional government was on, had organized elections, and from the swearing in of the new president, things are again going better. But then, while we have to thank the world and the West to help us have democracy, the appeal I want to make is that the election is not all of it. Because you see, after the election, after Mr. Ibrahim Baraketa has been elected and so on, we don't have peace in Mali. Okay? Because people have decided, Malians have decided to attack the central government. The world has helped us keep them away, but today we have terrorism in the 2/3 of the country, so there is no security. If you don't have security, you don't have investment. If you don't have investment, you don't have economic development, you don't have improvement of people's life. What my appeal is that we are grateful to the world to help us have democracy, but we would like the world to continue to assist us have the democracy, have solid roots. That is my comment. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rosemary, direct and to the point, please. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
My name is Rosemary Segero. I'm the president of Hope for Tomorrow. We focus on conflicts and violence in Africa. We have observed elections in Kenya and South Africa. And my question is to USID. USID, we have the applications that gets into the rural areas for people to know what is happening in the election, because many victims come from the rural area where they get violence, women suffer, children suffer. How can we get funding for our applications in the upcoming elections, to observe elections where the rural people and other people can have their applications, where they listen to the radio, to the television, and what is happening? Everybody needs to be aware of what is happening in the country. Madam Monde, you see, we have to talk, and the most important thing is ownership. Now that Africa is owning their own countries, we really appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Aisha Gallo. I'm from Guinea. My question is, since 1993, we started doing election in Guinea. Anytime the elections, you've died. My question goes to Dr. Christopher. He said, talk about education. How they can educate our positions in Guinea? Because if an opener of the president called the youth to come out to die, and the election is in October 11th, and they start dying. It's already 7 people died since last week. As we speak today, they're fighting again. And what they tell to the government is ask the military not to shoot them when they giving their voice to hear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much to everybody for their interventions. I'll give the panel an opportunity to respond, and then we'll take another round of questions. And so I think the Ambassador of Cameroon's comments stand by themselves. Any one of you can respond to those. There was a question about the Sierra Leone restoring the vice presidency to his elected position and the rule of law. A second question about what to do about Uganda and Rwanda. A third question from the Ambassador from Mali, really a plea about looking beyond the elections to finding ways to restore Mali to peace, or to restore peace to Mali. And then finally, USA support to ensure that rural people can exercise their right to vote. So I will start with...
Thank you. So maybe I would just like to address what the Ambassador of Mali just mentioned. As an American, as a Malian from the diaspora, I am very well aware of the peace issues that Mali is currently facing. At the NET, actually, last week, we welcomed the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mali, who gave a very clear overview of the peace talks that were currently taking place between the Malian government and the Tuareg rebels in northern Mali. And it is concerning, and I think that the U.S. has a huge role to play in making sure that the rebels sign the peace agreement, which has been, I don't know, the discussions have been going on for close to a year now, and Mali really needs that attention that it had a couple of years ago when the coup happened. And I think that after the coup happened and after the president was elected, really the attention Mali didn't get the attention that it used to have. So I am siding with the ambassador of Mali and pleading that we all work together to help bring peace back to Mali and making sure that we have security.
Sure.
I'll just take just very quick 2 questions to refer to my ambassador friend. I get this all the time about African leaders claiming that they need more time to perfect democracy. It's a little bit annoying because African leaders never have a problem with Western tastes. They love Western jets, Western wine. When they want to buy houses, they want to buy houses in Western capitals. But when it comes to democracy, it's a problem. It needs to grow, it needs to take time. But it don't take time when they have to lose their president. They don't have a problem opening accounts in foreign countries. But when it's time for democracy, we need more time. We need more time. Cameroon and Nigeria are brothers, and that's why I'm concerned about Cameroon, because the same way Boko Haram is ravaging Nigeria, is ravaging Northern Cameroon. So if it goes well for Nigeria, we hope it will go well for Cameroon. And that will lead me to the question of Uganda and Rwanda. These are countries where people need change. In the case of Rwanda, I was there last year. It's just one party rule. You can't find a dissenting opinion on the streets of Rwanda. That's how bad it is. Well, there's economic development and growth, but people need freedom, they need choice. And my appeal once again to the African leaders who are sit-tight, let my people go. That's it. It's as simple as that. Let them choose whomever person they want to lead them. And that's the essence of democracy.
I'll take 2 questions. Friends of Sierra Leone, with regards to the ongoing dispute between the president and the vice president. Unfortunately, I haven't followed that issue very closely, but one of the beauties about the conversation on democracy and governance in Africa today is that you don't even have to look outside of the continent to see examples where other systems have helped resolve these kinds of issues. I'm thinking about Nigeria again in 2006 and 2007, when there was that whole debate about the term elongation, when Obasanjo, as incoming president, very much wanted to get Atiku, his vice president, out of office, and the matter went to court. And in 9 times, I think 9 times, the Nigerian Supreme Court ruled against the sitting president. And that's how Atiku Abubakar was able to serve his term as vice president, because he had been elected on the ticket at the same time as Obasanjo. So I think that the people of Sierra Leone should talk to their Nigerian brothers. They should also talk to the courts in Sierra Leone if this is a matter that could be resolved by the courts, because increasingly we're seeing that through a number of countries, even the judiciary is beginning to assert its independence. And that there are a number of our brothers and sisters who sit on the benches of these courts who are willing to read the law and interpret the law as it should be. So each citizen should have their due constitutional rights respected. On Aisha's question with regards to Guinea, I think it's unfortunate that Guinea, which is a country that is so economically endowed, has suffered because of its governance since independence, really. And I think what Guinea is still going through today really underscores the point that democratic governance matters, because I think Guinea today is still grappling with the consequences of decades of autocratic and military rule. And so, in fact, when they had presidential elections in 2010, that was the first time that Guinea had a competitive, open presidential election. And so, some of these issues could also be attributed to the fact that the country hasn't experienced this type of competitive politics in the past. One of the things that happened in Nigeria, which I think could still also apply to a number of other countries, is that as the partners weighed in and helped shine the light on the Nigerian elections, the International Criminal Court released a declaration 2 weeks before election day on March 16. The International Criminal Court released a declaration which said that any Nigerian whose utterances or whose rhetoric led to violence would be held personally liable for their actions. This got a lot of play in Nigeria, and it put a lot of people on notice on both sides of the political divide that the era of impunity was over. And I think that really contributed. And so one of my recommendations would be to say that we collectively, the people in the country as well as friends of this country, should be proactive in the way in which we put out some of these benchmarks so that people are put on notice that whether you're with the security services or you're with the opposition or with the ruling party, you cannot afford by your own acts to contribute to the violation of other people's rights, to the killings of innocent people, because you'll be held personally liable. And I think that we still have 5 or 6 months to go. I understand that there's ongoing efforts to stimulate more dialogue between the ruling party and the opposition parties. I hope that that dialogue could really take place and that ECOWAS and other regional bodies could weigh in so that the Guineans can create an environment, an enabling environment for peaceful and credible elections come October this year.
Would you respond to the question about USAID?
Sure. I'll cover a couple of things very quickly. So, Rosemary, if you want to come up at the end, I'm happy to give you my contact information, and I'll put you in touch so that you understand how to apply at USAID, and of course you can talk to Camisa about NAD as well. So just come up and let's exchange email addresses and all of that. On Guinea and Sierra Leone, we are watching the situation and having discussions regularly, and one of the things we are very mindful of is these countries are in the throes of the Ebola crisis, and so we need the parties on both sides in both countries to be working together and finding peaceful, good solutions so that we keep focused on solving these really big problems that both countries are confronting. And to the ambassador from Mali, I was there last year. As you know, we have a robust presence there, and Mali is very important to the United States, to the U.S. government, to USAID, and we are committed to continuing to work with your country and your people on these very serious issues. And then lastly, in terms of the question on Uganda and Rwanda, a long time ago, my background is the financial sector. A long time ago, I was asked to design the architecture for a stock market in Uganda. And the story I was told, I have it secondhand, was that the president of Uganda was very interested in this, both because he was interested in private sector investment, but also he said apparently he was tired of looking on CNN and seeing these other stock exchanges get mentioned, and where was Kampala? And so I raised that story because I hope that the presidents of these countries are watching CNN and Twitter and so forth again and seeing what's happening in Zambia, in Nigeria, places like that, and will be equally interested in staying in the lead with their African colleagues.
Thank you. Let me take another quick round of questions. Please limit yourself to a minute. There's still quite a few people behind you, so sir, let's go.
Thank you very much. Okay, my name is Adrian Kimbi. I'm from DRC, and I would like to thank my congresswoman. I'm from California, Los Angeles, Culver City, so I voted for you. I did. Usually we see the United States pours money into African election and just walk away. There is no accountability. When you're an investor, you invest, you expect some dividend. Now, recently President Obama talked about, I guess he had a phone call with the president of DRC, and he was expecting a fair, free, and transparent election. Now, my question is, if the United States, by that I mean the president or maybe Eric Foster might answer that question. If they don't get that fair, free, and transparent election, what's your leverage? What can you do? Thank you.
Yes, my name is Makri, Sudan Press Freedom Organization. Actually, Miss Sudan, we are lucky for the invited by National Endowment for Democracy. Thank you. Sudan, I just want to go to the point. The American involvement in Sudan is heavy, strong, but it is slow and beautiful. I will give you an example. April 2014, there was a dialogue and negotiation. We as reporters, we can go there to take statements even from rebel movements to publish in our, the dialogue was okay, but it was just 3 weeks. After that, all things started to collapse. So that if you want to do a positive intervention, you have to do it in the, what I call it, the fertility time, okay? So you miss this, and after that, you move to the diplomatic pressures and other actions, something like this, which is not damaging just for the government, maybe the government and the people. And you know that in last Geneva round Human Rights Council, there was a rapporteur for the sanctions and its impacts on human rights. So what you need is a mechanism, pragmatic, not bureaucratic mechanism for U.S. administration, the Congress, and even organization, because sometimes events in Sudan is go fast. What you can do in 1 day or 1 week, it can change the future of Sudan. At that time of the government was relaxed. You can support the civil society, making general assembly, you can enhance parties, and after that, the political community will come out.
Femi Akibi, Manchester Trade. Simple question. What do we do in regards to the diaspora voting rights in our independent countries? And what do we do about third-party candidates, or otherwise called independent candidates? Thank you.
Good morning, Brother Cliff, GlobalReport.com, and also 6th Region Diaspora Caucus. We talk about free and fair elections, democracy, transparency, ownership of the people. As the Honorable Congressmember Bass has already pointed out, we have problems right here in the United States. I've heard reports that there are up to 5 corporate lobbyists per Congressmember for certain specific industries. Meanwhile, Africa has tons of resources, from coltan to oil, to land is being taken from African farmers, to the efforts by many corporate entities to impose genetically modified food upon the African continent, upon the world. How would you on the panel, and how would the United States and other champions of democracy ensure that